Hello, my name is Justin Bullock, and welcome to Candidates Corner. Today I have with me State Republican Representative Linda Camarota. Now, Linda, we're going to be asking you a few questions, and please feel free to be comfortable and answer to what you feel comfortable.
Thank you.
So, Linda, thank you so much for being here today. Could you please start with a little about you and how long you've lived in Bedford?
Sure. Thank you, Justin, and thank you for your service. Bedford voters, I want to thank you for helping me pass the line for the September 11 primary. As you may know, I'm a wife, a mother of 2 wonderful daughters, a registered nurse, a certified high school teacher. Last year, I retired from full-time work, but still mentor young students as their clinical nurse supervisor. I love working with our youth and helping them become compassionate, competent future healthcare professionals. This is a seasonal type work, about 8 to 10 hours a week, freeing me up to dedicate my time and energy to the role of your state representative.
Thank you. And for me personally, I thank you for your continued service.
Thank you.
I do know you were elected on the school board and served on that board as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, that's going back about 25 years. We had 2 elementary age children with very different needs. One was reading at age 2, the other had trouble reading at all. So we took a very active part in our kids' education, and when we started to make requests about looking at curriculum and phonics and things like that, we felt like we were meeting some resistance. Me being a hands-on type parent and a nurse and teacher by nature, I didn't find that to be acceptable. So I ran for school board. I won that election. It was pretty intense 3 years. The Bedford School Board did, in fact, advance the district in terms of accountability and transparency.
And thank you. I also heard you worked with Senator Sheila Roberge. Now, after your school board service, now, please tell us a little bit about that.
This was before your time, Justin. You're about my children's age. Senator Sheila Roberge, most people might remember her as writing a bill and passing a law to protect, you'll enjoy this, Justin, to protect dogs in the back of pickup trucks. She actually wrote a law to say that they need to be harnessed and protected. Well, I feel that way about children as well. So back to parental rights and access to things being given to children, surveys and tests and things like that in the public school system. We weren't able, parents weren't able to look at the required state assessment exam, which was given 3 times during the course of a child's education. That didn't sit right with me. I thought that we wanted to preserve the validity of the exam, of course, but we thought that after the fact, after the child sat for the exam, the parents should be able to take a peek at it. The teachers should be able to look at it, and at that time they weren't able to. We opened that up, we passed that law together, and again, transparency and accountability were the platform.
And that's amazing, and thank you for your continued service with the school board and education for our youth. Now, if you could, what made you decide to run for state representative?
Well, in a new chapter in my life, being retired, and with my passion for loving research in medicine, public safety and health, and wellness, I'm doing that research and studying it, analyzing it all together anyway. I thought I could apply that to the role of state representative and give service once more, return back to the community.
That's awesome. Thank you. Now, could you give us some examples of the accomplishments of the legislatures that have been passed?
Sure. I've spent some time, I've itemized it here. I was not part of passing these laws, of course, but I have 5 or 6 different areas I'd like to just quickly go through. The legislators passed a 2-year spending plan that meets the needs of our citizens with no new increased taxes. They increased the rainy day fund from 93 million to 100 million. So if something unexpected comes up, a natural disaster or anything like that, we can help the citizenry. This means to me, by no increased taxes, that families and small businesses are able to keep more of their money and thereby meet the needs of their families. Small businesses, they can increase their business, they can increase people's wages, they could hire more workers. So I thought that was a win-win. Another area that I was pleased with, and the governor signed a bill making it law, is, I call it election integrity, where they reinforced passing the residency requirements for New Hampshire voters. I don't know if you've noticed, but when we go in and we vote, we have to show our ID now. I am very happy to do that because I want to make sure that everybody's vote counts. And that won't go into effect, by the way, till 2020, so it doesn't affect this election. The legislature prohibited the state from requiring a school district implement Common Core standards. So let me clarify that a little bit. Sometimes the state or the Department of Education tells teachers what they need to teach, and they have to redo all of their curriculum and buy new books, and et cetera, et cetera. Common Core, you may be aware, is a national set of curriculum, and some states have mandated it. New Hampshire's proud to support local control. So what this did was to tell parents and school officials, you don't have to use it, but if you want to use it, you can. And I think that is priceless. That's wonderful. We all know we have a problem with opioid crisis. I'm happy to say that they increased the budget, the 2018-2019 Department of Health and Human Services budget by 7%, which is significant. So it goes from $4.4 billion with a B to $4.8 billion to help us address that real problem. This partly will assist in implementing and supporting effective prevention, treatment, and recovery for most of our vulnerable citizens, the most vulnerable. I'm very familiar with the safe stations that were set up in Manchester. One of my buddies, Chris Hickey, developed that. He went on to Washington, D.C. to show that whole plan to the country, and he's still working on that. It's very successful. 24/7, our fire stations are open. So if a parent or an addict is in trouble and needing medical care, they go right to the fire station, and it's open, and they can direct the person to the appropriate treatment. The one thing that I'm looking towards is that once we set up treatment, we train professionals on how to be effective in treating people in recovery, is an employer piece. I would love to see partnerships between the businesses, the healthcare professionals treating with the people in recovery, and then set up job sites so they can feel like they have a purpose in life and get back on their feet. So that's something I'd like to see in the future. Legislature funded full-day kindergarten for interested districts. And the other thing that Bedford is thinking about, Merrimack's thinking about, Litchfield is thinking about, is groundwater pollution. We all are aware of the issue of Merrimack water coming into the Bedford area and those other locations. This gives the Department of Environmental Services the right to regulate groundwater. So we can, for our kids, we can ensure that they have clean, healthy water for themselves. And that's about it in terms of mentioning. There were a whole lot of other bills. I heard from legislators, there's about 1,000 bills that go through Concord in 1 year, or maybe a 2-year session. and then they work on them. And a lot of them go on to interim study because it needs studying. We don't want to act fast on things like this.
Well, I guess some people always say that representatives have an easy job, but 1,000 bills, that's a lot.
Yeah, it sure is.
Now, one news story that keeps repeating itself in the fact of school shootings from Columbine to Sandy Hook to Parkland. This subject is dear to my heart. You know, for me, I have a 6-year-old in Memorial School in Bedford. What steps do you feel the legislature could take to safeguard the children of our state?
School safety is always at the top of my list of priorities. I was on my school safety committee for 17 years, and I always attend the annual Emergency Preparedness Convention, which is held here in Manchester every year in June, to learn from the experts what's new with active shooters. How do you do a lockdown? What is the best way to prepare educators to protect the children? All kinds of surveillance systems that might be purchased with funds directed in this area. Guns, in my opinion, are not the problem. They may be used, but they're not the problem. The main problem is violence within the society. And if we look back at those schools that you just mentioned, we see that mental health issues are a prime suspect in terms of why young people might get out of control. I also believe that when you look at those young people that became violent and harmed children and high schoolers, you will see that they historically are taking psychotropic drugs for ADHD, you name it, bipolar. We have so many mental diagnoses that we label children with, and once they become labeled, then the healthcare providers prescribe drug after drug after drug. Sometimes one drug counteracts the other drug.
Right.
Sometimes you can't sleep, then you don't have an appetite. These drugs that were prescribed in a couple of these cases are meant for adults, and we're giving adult psychotropic drugs to children. Some of the side effects, if you were to go back and look at the drugs like Prozac, 2 of the side effects are harmful behavior towards self and homicide behavior. So we already know that. Just like we got in trouble with antibiotics, over prescribing antibiotics and creating superbugs, just like we got caught, I'm going to say with our pants down, prescribing pain medicine to make someone feel better, we end up with an opioid crisis. And in this instance, I would like to further research the effects of psychotropic drugs on kids and their behavior. So I do know that the legislator has put a lot of weight and funding behind the mental health issue. We have a 10-year plan being created as we speak. I've taken a look at it. They have to flesh that out a little bit more. They have a lot of people with a lot of experience to look at that. And as a legislator, like I said, I'd like to look at other areas that maybe haven't been put under the magnifying glass yet.
Right. Pretty much like an alternative medication besides jumping straight to certain medications meant for adults. But as you know, for me, myself, I am a disabled veteran. After my service with the Army, I came home to live with my father and my son. I know there's been, I guess some people can call it a stigma or a dogma at the VA. Me personally, I've seen veterans talk to me and like, you know, they don't like the type of, like the help that they're getting. They feel like they're not being listened to. Now, as a state representative, what do you think you can do to help make sure that veterans like myself and others out there, regardless of Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, what do you think you can do to help make sure that they're taken care of to the best possible medical care that they can receive?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. It's obvious that Manchester doesn't have a VA hospital. It's also known to most people, because it's been in the newspapers, that there was a whistleblower for the Manchester VA, that there was mismanagement, there was care that was, you go in, you say, I need a MRI or something, and it might take months in order for the veteran to receive care. Long waiting lists, having to go out of state for care. All of those things are not acceptable. I personally believe that our veterans should have the best care wherever they want to receive care. For us, we're an hour away from the best hospitals in the world, Boston and Burlington, Leahy Clinic. My brother receives care at the outpatient in Manchester. I know you do. My father did. I would go to my father's appointments with the VA, and when they know that there's a medical professional there, they make sure they dot their I's and cross their T's. What I would like to see happen, and I know a lot of people are working towards this, is for those veterans to be able to not worry about where they're going to receive their care, and to be able to select any physician they want. And we give them a big thank you by giving them the best that we possibly have for them.
And thank you. I know eventually a lot of veterans are going to be thankful eventually when things do happen to work themselves out for the betterment of everyone.
Do you think it's improving since you've been back? Have you noticed anything different?
For me personally, I haven't. It really depends. Actually, it's more of a toss-up. There's days you walk in, you feel like you're being paid attention to, that you're being listened to. Then there's days you walk in, you're talking to the same person, but now they're just looking at you like, okay, and?
So you would be a good person for me to stay in touch with.
And I'd love to stay in touch with you.
Once elected as your state legislator, and you can give me progress reports on how that's going.
And I'd love to.
Thank you.
Another school issue, and I'm sorry, this does tend to flip-flop with questions, but another school issue is the continuing controversy concerning school district personnel becoming endorsers and references of good character for a convicted pedophile. I'd like to share an email with you that was sent from a concerned parent concerning the counselors. Quote, "The freedom of speech may be their right, but I hope the district tightens up contracts so that this will not be considered acceptable behavior in the future. They should resign in shame." End quote. What do you think the legislature might do to prevent our children from being placed under authority of individuals who are admitted pedophiles, sex offenders, who, people seem to have no problem supporting?
I happen to be following this very, very closely. Again, student safety is at the very top of my priorities. It makes me think about me being a registered nurse and a certified teacher. I have to answer to the New Hampshire Board of Nursing. I have to answer to the New Hampshire Department of Education in order to maintain those credentials. I didn't see that worked out. What we're talking about today is, we call it the Toric case. We have a female counselor who admitted to sexually assaulting a 14-year-old. She admitted, and at the sentencing hearing, after found guilty, 3 of our counselors went to ask for leniency of sentencing. So when I first heard that, I said, I can't be hearing this right. This cannot be right. But in fact, it was. We got copies of transcripts. We looked at it because we don't want to pass rumors about things that aren't correct.
Right.
So, in fact, our superintendent resigned over this matter just a month or 6 weeks ago. In my mind, any professional who goes out of their way to testify for an admitted predator or pedophile has no right or are just not suited to be working with children. It just ethically, it's not acceptable. Those counselors are still in the school system right now. Parents have been given the opportunity to request other counselors, and now apparently that is causing a little bit of assignment difficulties because 2 of our counselors are not, and 1 is still out on paid leave because the district is struggling with that issue. For me, it's a no-brainer. You don't work with kids if you're supporting a pedophile. Just doesn't jive.
And that I agree. Because for me, like I said, it hits home for me. I mean, I have a 6-year-old. You know, something like that were to happen, I'd be in the same boat and have the same feelings as all the other parents out there. And I don't blame them for the way they feel. It's their right.
Yep. Yep.
Now, Linda, you taught high school students for 17 years in a local school district. Many parents statewide are dissatisfied with how local school districts are managing bullying in their schools. Now, I know over the summer you attended a Bedford School District meeting on bullying when a mom and daughter team introduced the I Got Your Back bullying project. I heard that you addressed the school board during that meeting. Please share with everyone, what did you discuss with them?
Back to the old days, huh? At least I was on the other side of the table this time. Justin, you have a 6-year-old in one of our elementary schools. Both of my girls are Bedford School District graduates. Bedford has always had concerns about bullying and the effects of bullying on our children. Fast forward 25 years to present day, and now we have cell phones in the schools, we have social media, and we have Instagram, where children can be bullied in ways that never existed before. As a teacher of high schoolers, I saw with my own eyes how teenagers were devastated by bullying, unable to even function in the classroom and in need of emotional supports and parent involvement. The Bedford, this might seem a little off subject, but it's tied in. The Bedford superintendent in July shared the Bedford Youth Behavior Risk Survey results with our community the same day of the bullying presentation, where the governor came and chatted with us about bullying. Governor Sununu also addressed the board, sharing his thoughts. I have posted those results on my webpage if anybody wants to get more details, but that youth risk behavior survey, which we've been doing for years, when my kids were there, we were doing it. Here's a few examples of our Bedford high schooler statistics. 1, and I'm going to itemize these. On electronic bullying, 332 Bedford high school students of 1,400 have suffered electronic bullying. That's significant. 136 of 1,400 Bedford high school students did not go to school on a day or more than a day because they felt unsafe at their own school and going to and from school and school buses. 3, 199 of 1,400 students carried a weapon on one or more days in the past 30 days when they did the survey. Now, keeping those students in mind and thinking about bullying, 209 students seriously considered suicide during the past 12 months, and 106 of 1,300 who responded attempted suicide on one or more times during the past 12 months. That data was shared uncomfortably, because they're so disturbing, with the school board that night. The same night we were talking about bullying, so I see it as related. In the audience was the grandparent of a little 11-year-old who had just killed herself the month before. Her name was Skylar, and she was bullied, and the relatives reported, quote, her pain was too much to bear. So that's what we're dealing with, fragile internal lack of tools to protect themselves and to know that pain will pass at some point. So to get back to your question, I told the school board that night that I looked at the Bedford School District policies, and I wasn't happy with the policies. my biggest worry was that the time span. For example, the Bedford School Board says within 48 hours the parent will be contacted. Well, if your child was bullied that day and was all upset, would you want to know within 48 hours or would you want to know the same day?
I'd rather know the same day personally, or at least maybe within 10 to 15 minutes after the incident.
Yeah. So that we could then nurture the child and find out how they were doing when they got home.
Right.
So I asked them to look at that 48 hours. And then another part of the policy said within 10 days, the investigation would either start or come to conclusion. 10 days is eternity. You bring the parents in, parents of the one that was accused of bullying and the parents of the child that was bullied, and you deal with it. And you give consequences. I didn't see a lot of consequences. So we went over that, and the board, to their credit, is working on it. They set up a committee, but I'd like to see that ball roll a little faster. We have a serious problem in Bedford and throughout the state and the nation with bullying, with school violence, with student safety. And as a legislator, I would make it a point to be on a committee to help with that area because I have that personal experience with the students.
And with that point, I know you're going to do great because you have that experience, and it's near and dear to you.
It is.
So I know you'll do a great job.
Thank you, Justin.
Now, unfortunately, with only a few minutes left and with such short time, because time seems to fly by in these situations, if you could briefly, could you tell the viewers on how they can get a hold of you and if they have any questions and how they can reach out?
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, we really used up a lot of time very quickly. Friends and neighbors, on November 6th, I ask that you take the time in your busy day to vote for the best candidates who will represent you and listen to your concerns and ideas. Being a nurse and a teacher over the years have honed my listening skills as well as my passion for research and becoming analytical. I pride myself in being thoughtful and patient as to not jump to the easy answers. We want to make sure as your legislators we support sustainable and effective solutions. I have a lot of faith in our New Hampshire citizenry and will never support a broad-based tax. I believe families and small businesses, as I mentioned before, can best spend money to meet their needs. Limited government is the best kind of government. I ask for your vote for me on November 6th so that I can join legislators to continue the progress already started that will benefit us over the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Now, well, pardon me, sorry, I apologize. Thank you, Linda, for your participation. I'm Justin Bullock, and I thank you and our audience for watching today, and I remind you to please vote on November 6th at the Bedford High School.